technology is so dependable, but yet it went down for 5 minutes. So anyways, sorry about that. But for those that we missed last week, people asked, so all I did, went back to brag. It was a good time. I'm going to watch Special Forces Qualification Course graduates graduate. Got to go out to meals with them and just talk to them and start welcoming them into the regiment and into different teams, different companies. So it was exciting. And I last time I went to a graduation was in 2018. And that was about midway through my SF career. And it was like, yeah, whatever. And it was like kind of cool. And, you know, it wasn't like a big deal. It was like just cool watching guys graduate. This time, I actually kind of sat up in the bleachers. There's at Crown something Stadium in Fayetteville, which is the ice hockey, their thing, rink. Thank you. Is it really called a rink? Their ice rink, I guess, for their professional hockey players. But anyways, so to this place, and it's got that big, has a big 4 TV screens that hangs down the center, and the announcer talks to and everything. And I was sitting in the bleachers up to the bar so I could keep track of the guys that would come into our unit. And I remember I was sitting there, and I was kind of nervous because I know it sounds funny being nervous, but I was sitting there in uniform, and most people were not in a uniform around me. It was families and everything, and I always feel weird and I'm running around in a uniform because it's like they see the tab on my shoulder, they see the beret in my pocket if I'm not wearing it, and then people want, oh, thank you, and then they make a big deal out of it, and I just feel like I want to shrink. But anyways, so I'm sitting there, and they're doing this like 8-minute intro, right, for all the families. So this is guys are just graduating, sons, all sons, but brothers and stuff like that. And they have this really cool intro, right? It's like showing them go through part of the course and the things they were doing. I don't know if it's actually their class that they were showing, but nonetheless, and of course, the announcer that's talking over the video's got one of those really cool voices that pumps you up and what they're doing and what SF does and where we're going. And it was kind of funny. I'm sitting there like going, I want to do this again. Because I've gotten to the point that's like, hey, I'm closing out my career. I'm like, okay, I'm done. But they got me pumped. Where can I re-sign up? Anyways, so yeah, it was actually a really good time though. There was a lot of guys that were excited. The upside to it is, and the weird side to it is as I'm sitting there, I'm remembering back when I graduated, and then I'm watching these new guys come in, this whole new generation. I'm about ready to end going, oh my gosh, someone's getting old. They're just starting, and I'm kind of coming down to the end. And then the commander, I think it was a group commander, talked, and a couple other people talked, and they were talking about the way things are changing. So I've been pretty much only in the global war on terror, and now it's kind of changed into these different type of adversaries. That war, it still has an existence, but it's not like it was. And now the new threats that are out there. And I started being honest with myself, going, you know what? If I stuck around and went after that, now, of course, because of the things I've done, I could lead and go into it, but I wouldn't have much more experience going into, going like to a World War II thing where you're going back into cities and dealing with the different adversaries in different ways, and not out in the middle of the desert where borders matter now. It's not the human terrain. Anyways, just putting that out, and I just realized, yeah, I guess it's about time I roll up my time and check out. I still got a couple more years, but anyways, so it was a good time, and I'm glad I did it. It's cool seeing people graduate and move on. What's that? Man, I'm no different than anybody else. It's just my job. It's just my job. My wife has the hardest job of all of it because, if you think about it, I'm over there, I'm living in it, but in the back of her head, she doesn't know what's going on. And we've had situations, I don't know why I'm going down this, we got a study to do, but we've had situations that we could talk about where I'll say one thing that happened is at one time I'd come in from an op, and they had a TOC, which is a Tactical Operations Center. I'm not going to say where, but they would flip on Wi-Fi at certain periods, so you can go in there, and you couldn't like make phone calls, you couldn't like watch Netflixes or any of these things. It's just long enough so they get a chance to get on your secured app and just text home, like, hey, everything's all cool, and you can text back and forth. They'd have it on for about 30 minutes. They'd shut it back off, so the load would always go back into what's important, to what's really what they call the red side. And I'd gotten back in, and I'd been out all night. And the first word I got was like, okay, you guys, you're not going to go back out and probably till tomorrow. And this, I remember coming back, it was like at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning. We gotten back in and tired as hell. And so I texted her, and she's like, okay, cool. I said, hey, you know what? I'll text you tonight. You know, give me 8 hours so I can eat, go to the gym, get a little bit of sleep. And then she's like, okay. 3 hours later, and it's now nighttime here, however that worked out. I remember, but it's 3 hours later. I don't remember anyways, it's 3 hours later. So it's about 10, 11 o'clock. They come into where I was and my team, and they're like, 15 minutes truck side, which means you get up, your stuff's already ready to go. So that's kind of how we work. Is like, if you go, it's like now. So with the truck side, you go out there, you talk about the plan, what you're going to do, the routes, all this stuff. And it was in and gone. And I was gone for, I think it was almost 60 hours. And she didn't know that. The last thing she heard from me is, I will call you or I'll hit you up in 8 hours. Now you got to put that, I know what I'm in. Like, I'm good. I'm here. I see what's happening. And there's nothing in the back of my head. But imagine being that wife. And that's why I say she has the toughest job. And any wife in this capacity. So I don't want to minimize it. And parents too. I don't want to put anything down on parents. But now all of a sudden I'm gone. She's not hearing from me. There is no way to get a hold of me. There's no one to call, especially where I was. It was just, now she's in a complete stress mode. And of course, things go through your head as like, is that car going to pull up? Am I going to get that phone call? And where she was working, she was talking about, she was just like bawling at work. I think they sent her home at one time. It's like, I get it. That's stress. That is more stress than I ever had to deal with. Because my stress was physical. My stress was not mental. So thank you. But those that have loved ones overseas and are in combat areas and bad areas, the ones that are back here, that's the highest stress point. That is the worst thing to be doing. So that's why I'm like minimizing what I do. I got to play and have fun. She got to stress and cry. But anyways, so thank you for being my wife and for your service. Okay, so anyways, let's go ahead and get started on this. Now, it was brought to my attention. I'm glad it was, so we can be a little bit more clear. Here's what we're going to be doing tonight. Right here is the word koine, and I'm just going to spell it out, Koine, because I referenced this as far as the Koine Greek, right? And this is how it's spelled. This is what it is. So this means simple man's Greek. And the reason why I'm telling you this, because the person brought to my attention was like trying to figure out, what is this Koine Greek? And people think it's Coin. What is its existence? What does it matter? It does matter. It is Koine Greek, came from Alexander the Great. And that's why I've said this kind of before. He was taking all the different language, Hebrew, Aramaic, and kind of did a hooked on phonics version of it to the Greek. And so they could all talk. And so you could have the ability to communicate and understand by redeveloping this simple man Greek. So there was trade. So he was trying to build massive nation. And so anyway, that's where it comes from. Of course, there was an archaic Greek. It's different. Many things are the same. And then you got Koine Greek, and then from that, and just like many languages, you have dialects. So for instance, Koine Greek actually started getting a dialect. It was called Thessalonica Greek. And there's other ones, like some of the churches you study about, had its own form of this Koine Greek. And then it would mature, masticize into what we now call modern Greek. And what's funny, if you kind of study and watch how Greek works, there's been words changed as late as the 50s in modern Greek. So the reason why I make this significant, and a lot of modern Greek, don't get me wrong, is the same as Koine Greek, don't get me wrong. And we don't go through every single word in the Bible in Greek. I just point out the ones that for the context point. And the reason why this is important, because a lot of times if you're looking at just modern Greek, or if you're doing the Strong's Concordance, which is based upon modern Greek, a lot of time its definitions or what it's talking about or how it does an etymology of the word and the different things is not specific enough into the context of what it meant at the time, I'm going to say, of Alexander the Great, or the time of the Roman Empire, that like when Christ was around, when all this was being recorded and written. So if you ever want to know and want to look, that is what it is. It's Koine Greek. So that's where it comes from. So everybody knows that we're all now on the same playing field. Why, if you are maybe someone that knows Greek out there, or modern Greek or whatever else, And sometimes I might say something like, hold on, that's not exactly what that word means. Well, it could mean that. Understand a lot of time it's coming from because is this Koine Greek. And like I said, a lot of times just regular modern Greek is still similar. They still use a lot of the same words. So they'll be exactly comparison or side by side. And as an example I used before, we were learning about the word angel, all right? So that in Koine Greek originally, when it was written, it was only known as a messenger, and we talked about this. It wasn't till later, as you start going into the different dialects of Greek and into modern Greek, that it now was inclusive of also angelic beings. So when the Revelation is being read and it's been transliterated, to Latin and then back to Old English or whatever, and they go back, they're still kind of in the modern Greek, they'll put angel. It gives you the assumption that, oh, John's talking about the angels of the church. And people go, oh, so there's this little dude up there with wings flopping around the church who's John's going to talk to. Well, in the original text of it, in the context of it, it's actually talking about a messenger, as we talked about John the Baptist. Go back to understand it's actually a messenger. It's a living person in that context. So anyways, that's the point I want to make to this. I'm glad it was brought to my attention. So when I do say that or mention the word coin or koine or what Greek I'm using, it's coming from this. That was the original text of how it was written. But like I said, many times modern Greek is exactly the same word, same definition, same etymologies, but sometimes they are a little bit different. So that's why that's up there if anybody's interested. So we're all on the same page, and I'm just not making things up, because if you're out there trying to find Koine Greek as being C-O-I-N, you're not going to find it. And he's just making things up. So, all right. So I was going to, tonight's lesson, what we're going to do is going to be Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. It's not going to be real long. There's going to be some depth to it. You can see there's only a little bit up here. There's a reason for that. But what I was going to do, just kind of give you guys a little heads up, I had thought after last lesson we had, and I threw up the Arab revolt flag and the Palestinian flag, and we went back and talked, and I made this statement, and I will stand by this statement. I said the gloves are coming off, that Islam is the problem. All right? This is where everything's in. Palestine is a point to where all this is going to be happening. So I was like, oh, you know what? Everybody seemed to like that. I'm just going to go ahead, and I talked about the number 666, the number of the beast. And I said, it's not coming from gematria, none of this crap that people say. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go ahead, jump to chapter 13, and I'm just going to tell them what the answer is. And I was like pumped and excited about it. I think I even told Phil I was going to do it. Like, I'm going to tell everybody. Two problems. More than two problems. The first problem is I'm an idiot. That's the wrong way to do this. Second problem is, like I've always said, we have to understand the Bible, especially Revelation, in context, in how it's written, because the scripture supports the scripture, and it is very chronological, and you're going to kind of see that precision tonight. Second thing is, if I just told you the answer, so just went back to chapter 13, just pulled that out and go, okay, it says this, this, and this, and here it is, and then here's your answer. I could do that, and some would probably go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'll believe you. Cool, right on. But most are going to go, hold on, how did you get to that conclusion? So if you think it like if you were going to do a division problem, you could write a division problem on the board and like go ahead and hit your little calculator and put the answer on the top and like, oh, look, there was the answer. But this is long division. You got to show your work. So it'd be long division, but it'd just be a whole host of numbers trying to figure out what that answer is. It's on the top bar of the division problem. Because there is a lot of depth. There is a lot of understanding you've got to get. So when we get to that point, it's going to help. And when we get to it, trust me, we are going to go swinging all the way back into the Old Testament, and things you never even thought about are going to come through. And just for fun, just it's going to drive people nuts. I know, because there is an answer to this. But as an example, if you went back even to Genesis, what is the difference before the flood and after the flood? What wasn't there, and then what was there? I'll just leave it there. That has a lot to do with it. But again, this is the concept, and understand the answer to that whole point of this number of the beast and the number of man and then blah, 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 blah. You're going to have to understand something in depth from Genesis, very in depth. And it's something you don't even stop to think about, but you'll see and go, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. But anyways, that's why we're not going to do it, because I want to walk this through the way it's designed. I'll be honest, I don't want any prideful crap up here where I'm like, you know what, I gave them something really cool this week. Now I'm going to jump over to this and I'm going to tell them something really cool so they buy into everything. No. We're going to keep this in the progress of how it's going, because by the time we get to there, you're pretty much already going to get the answer and know what it says by the time we get there, with some more supporting scripture. So we are not going to go and jump into the number of the beast. So yeah, maybe that's a plug until chapter 13 for people out there. Stick around and we'll get there eventually. But anyway, so we're not going to do that. So right now we're going to go into Revelation. Before I say that, at the end of this, I'm going to give a context to a little bit more understanding and context to what we talked about last lesson. That's why tonight's not going to be really long. And it's not really long because we'll get to it. And one thing I'm going to say in here, I'm going to ask a question of why something is written here. I'm not going to give the answer tonight because it is a in-depth answer to understand something, but we'll get there. So we're going to start in Revelation 6, verse 1 and 2. And I'll just go ahead and read verse 1 and 2 out loud. It says, now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, come. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering to conquer. And there's not a whole lot in this. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot. It's like, oh, it's just an introductory going into chapter 6. But there's actually a little bit more depth, and the reason why I'm going to show some of this depth is because of some statements I've made previous to this, and I'm going to bring them out here in a second so that you get more of a solid foundational understanding of things maybe I said all the way back into the introduction we started with this, understanding why I made the statements I made. Because a lot of times I say things, it's like, okay, these are just words, kind of helps, but everything I'm saying has something to do with what we're talking about. That's why a lot of times I'm saying, pay attention. And I told you when we get into chapter 6, I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to break it down to smaller parts so that people's ears, like the lady in the back row over there, don't start smoking. Got that a few times, to try to keep it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So here in verse 6, it says, now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals. Okay, here's the thing. Now, I don't know every version out there, but the word is not now. The word is the word and this is significant. And that comes from the word kai. All right, this is a Greek word, K-A-I. And kai means, or is defined as, and, even, or also. So it is a continual thing of events happening. So it's just progressively going. So if we went back to, and I'm just going to read it, and we were to read all of chapter 5, and everybody remembers we're reading chapter 5, and the end was like with the elders and praying and all this. And Revelation 5, chapter 14, or verse 14 says, and the four living creatures said, amen. And the elders fell down and worshiped. Then it would just says, and I watched when the Lamb opened. There isn't a pause in time, is what I'm trying to point out right now. So he was up there in the throne room. He's seen all these things happen. Everybody bowed down. They're praying because he is now the worthy one. And he grabbed, remember, I told you he grabbed the seal, the scroll. My head always wants to go back to the title deed to earth, but yes, grab the scroll, and with force, I'm taking it. And then everybody's praying. Everybody's like, it's happening now. And John is just continually writing. He didn't write, chapter 6. He didn't do that. So it rolls right into, and I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals. Now, the reason why I'm making a big deal about this is because if you were to go to, and this is why I have Revelation 6 up there, it isn't for this verse. So I will tell them to you. If you went to stayed in 6 and went to verse 3, verse 5, verse 7, verse 9, and chapter 8, verse 1, every one of these verses begin the opening of the next seal, 1 through 7. But it's worded different. And this is where it's important to understand. So in each one of those, the word comes up as hot. Now, I don't know how everybody's Bible translate, but a lot of times it'll say now or it'll say and, but the key word in here, what it actually says is and when. And you're thinking, when? What's so big about the word when? It makes a lot of sense. I'm going to tell you why. So the word when, hote, which is that second word up there, is the New Testament's principal temporal conjunction. I'm just giving you the fact of how it's written, then we'll break it down. Introducing clauses that fix events within time when the word when is at the time that. It's used 103 times. They weave a chronological thread through redemptive history, anchoring doctrine to concrete moments. So my point is this, or the point of this is what this is. So when we move from chapter 5, he's doing a continual, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. The first seal gets opened, and this happened. He's seen it get opened, but all of a sudden it switches the narrative. It goes to and then, or and when. So what it's telling us is that this is now talking about a time thing. It's not saying it happened, it happened, it happened. There's a time that it happened. It doesn't mean it was immediate. So as we're going through these seals, what you need to understand, these are going to be events, things that are happening in our world. And we're going to break that down a little bit next week, the concept of the world. But it breaks it down. But it doesn't happen one on top of the other. A lot of people have this concept that it goes, okay, the first seal is broken. What it says started and it stops. And then the second seal is broken. It starts because Christ just snapped. Okay, go. And then it stops. It doesn't. One thing builds upon another, but they don't all happen conclusively on top of each other. There is a period of time between the first seal and the second seal and the third seal and the fourth seal. And that's why the word is used and when. Now, what's interesting, in this word, there is it's called a Christological moment that's marked by the word hote that we're talking about. And here's how it's defined. That it's called the Lamb, and it's actually talking about these verses right here. The Lamb opens each seal when the time arrives, affirming Christ's sovereign pacing of history. All right. Now, the reason why I'm making this a big deal, the reason why I'm saying this, because all the way back to our original introduction, I made the statement that Revelation is a chronological book. This is what supports that narrative. You can't use these words and go, when it's a chronological thing of the pace of history that Christ is it's happening under his sovereign rule, and go, oh, well, this section goes all the way back. We're going back in time. No, it's a chronological event. And this takes away the context that you'll hear many people teaching on the book of Revelation, and they'll say that there are, quote unquote, parenthetical pauses. And a parenthetical pause that they will speak of is these points, and I'm just restating things I said in the beginning, is that like, okay, John's talking, he's telling us things are going on, then they'll get to a point they don't understand what it's talking about next. So they'll say, okay, what this is doing, it's a pause. And what's happening is, and this is exactly what they say, that John is trying to explain what he was just talking about over here. So he's re-explaining it. This is gifted from Christ. There is no try. It is specific in its design. So they'll go, okay, well, the timeline stops now. It's no longer chronological. So to understand this is actually talking about something going back in history, all right? Or it's just simply trying to explain what it was. And they'll tell us there's a total of 8 chapters that they will mark out as being parenthetical pauses in the book of Revelation, and it's not chronological, nor does it continue going. And the problem is, with what we're reading here, this is going to keep coming up over and over. It is all chronological. There is no pauses. And I promise you, and I guarantee you, there is nowhere in here that John would have to attempt to try to explain what it is that God is saying. That is the most retarded, stupid, moronic claim I've ever heard. Oh, well, God's not quite good enough at what he's doing and telling me to write, so let's pause so I can write some more to explain what this moron up here can't seem to explain. So that's why chapter 9 is a helicopter. There's no helicopter in chapter 9. I know I'm getting passionate. It's because I hate the way the things get taught, And then we all of a sudden kind of look like, oh, God's not quite as smart as he thought he was. Now he's got this little human down here that's like explaining it for us because he can't figure out how to explain it. Maybe he's too smart for us. But point being is, the reason why I'm bringing these up is you'll start seeing, I want you to understand that this is progressively going to go through in time. Now, I will not be able to definitively go, okay, on this date, when you say the first seal opens, and then the when part, the second seal opens. I can't go, okay, so when this happens, exactly, I don't know, 46 days later, the second seal gets open. I can't do that. I will not be able to do that. I won't even try to do that. But what I'm pointing out is there will be periods of time before the next seal gets open, but one thing will build upon each other. And this points out the thing that it anchorings the doctrine to concrete moments, and it is, what did I say? It's affirming Christ's sovereign pacing of history, not sovereign pacing of history, pause, stop, go back and refigure out what it is we don't know, and then let's start again. So it is chronological. All right. Now, like I said, this next part I'm going to talk about within this verse 6, chapter 1. Now, and I watched the Lamb open one of the 7 seals. Okay. Everybody understands the 7 seals. It's a scroll, crack, 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 opens it up, and we see the events and the things that are going to take place every time it gets cracked. But I told you just a little bit ago, this is the one I'm going to ask the question. You're not going to know the answer, obviously. Because it's a very, well, I shouldn't say you're not going to know the answer. If you've like really like spun up and kind of like, oh, I know that. That's going to be awesome. But this is going to be a whole study next week. And I'm making a deal out of it because it is something that is taught. Now, it's very moronically mistaught in some churches, and you'll see when we get there. But the question is this. So we have the 7 seals. All right, within that, okay, exposed into the 7 trumpets, and then into the 7 thunders, and then into the 7 bowls. All these different so-called judgments, we call them. But you got to think, why all these? Now, when I say why all these 7s, people go, well, because that's God's perfect number. It's just perfect. I get it. There's a lot of people that like to use the numerology to fit everything into the Bible and try to come up with these cool numbers to predict times and places and all these other things. And I'm not saying there's a lot of significance to numbers, but this isn't about the number 7, because we're going to go back and think about this. This is just the ending part. So the big question is, why were there 7 seasons of church history? To today, it's about 2,000 years. Why is there 7 years of tribulation? Why are there the 7 seals? Why are there the 7 trumpets? Why are there the 7 thunders? And why are there the 7 bowl judgments? That is a really good question. And when I kind of was going through this, like, why all these different things? And why so much time? Because the question or the answer could be this, or to understand is like, if Christ and God are so sovereign, then why didn't he just fix this a long time ago? Other than the fact of prophecy. He could have done it. He could have rewrote this Bible, made the Bible different a long time ago. Why so much time? Why, if let's just assume for a second, just for a second, that in this year of 2025, the tribulation were to start, all right? I'm just making an assumption. Then why would it take over 2,000 years? Why did we need 2,000 years to get to this point? And why do we have to have another 7 years? And why do we have to do all these things? There's actually a very, very specific, awesome answer to that. And next week, we're going to get into this. Next week, we'll just get into it. So that's where the thing that's going to be next week. And we're going to break that way down. It's a lot of fun. And it's going to be really eye-opening because I'm just going to leave it there. Because I start saying too much, I'm just going to keep going on these rabbit holes. But so next week, we're going to understand the why all this time, why the 7 seals, why the 7 trumpets, why the 7 bowls, why all the 7 everything. And it's not doesn't necessarily have to do with the number 7. This is talking about the element of time. I'll give you a clue. I have to give a clue. So clue in this is why, when we went back and we looked at the book of Daniel and we were understanding that whole 487 years, why was that time talked about? What was important about that 487 years? This is, some of you might have the answer, but this is going to finalize that answer. And it's not what people think, but it's actually really cool. So anyways, now we're going to go on to verse 2, after I just talked a whole lot about that. And it says in verse 2, Oh, I'm sorry. In verse 1 still, after the 7 seals, and it says, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a loud voice, come. All right, so a lot of people think this loud voice is talking to John, saying, come, let me show you something. Actually, no, this goes back to the sovereign authority of Christ. This come is now, when it falls into the second verse, it says, and I look. So he heard the word come, and again, a continuation. It's just constantly going, and behold, a white horse and its rider. So the word come here in direction is talking to that rider of that white horse is being told to come. It's not for John to come up and look. He's telling the white horse, not the horse really, the rider to come. And it says, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. All right, so this, and I looked, and behold, a white horse. So this white horse, some people teach us, and it's kind of cool. I actually kind of like it. I didn't originally see it in this context, but I don't see why it doesn't play that this is actually it as well. Say that this is demonstration. This is the Antichrist. We've talked about the Antichrist because he's coming on a white horse, but he's counterfeit. Because in chapter 20, we see Jesus comes down on a white horse. And there is truth to that. And I didn't connect the two things because I learned this, what I'm going to tell you here in a second, before I learned people saying it was a demonstration of a counterfeit Christ or the Antichrist. He's a counterfeit riding the same horse. And the white means purity and peace. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Well, we know it's part of the flag, but when we look at the word white and why Christ is on it, it's purity, it's peace. But purity is white. That's why they have the white robes. We'll get to that here in a second. So when I heard about this, I was like, oh, wow, that actually kind of makes sense because this is something I had learned earlier, but didn't connect it because what I'm about to tell you I learned it before I went to the 2,500 hours of understanding Revelation. That in Islam, all right, they say the same thing, but they have an imam. That this imam is going to come riding in on the white horse, and he is the Messiah. Interesting how they read this. Now, to be clear, I've talked about this before. We're going to talk a little bit more in a minute. There's 2 different sides to Islam, all right? You have the Sunni and the Shia. The Sunni, that isn't necessarily their belief that there is going to be this quote-unquote Imam Messiah going to come. But to the Shia side, that's what they believe, and it's called the 12th Imam. And if I remember right, they still think he's lost in the desert someplace right now, and they're waiting for him to come out. Recently, there was a guy that was claiming in Islam, when I was over there, I mean, it was kind of going almost big over there, and a lot of people were looking into it, claiming to be that person. It failed by the wayside. But so there is, what's interesting, I'm not going to go into it tonight. What is interesting, there is actually a lot of mirrored understanding and reading to the way we understand Revelation to exactly what Islam says. It's just who the players are different. So when I understood that and seeing the word counterfeit, somebody saying this is the counterfeit, the Antichrist, claiming to be Christ, basically, that mirrored exactly like, okay, that's kind of what Islam is teaching with the 12th Imam. But as we also know, we talked about before, later this person is going to claim to be God when he does the desolation, the abomination of desolation in the temple. So anyways, that was an interesting thing. And I just wanted to point that out to you, that there's just another little nugget that I learned kind of studying and listening a little bit to the Quran and what was believed and which side believed what. Because if you said all Islam, that would be incorrect. It's more the Shia side believed that. So anyways, where was I? And behold, the white horse. Now, this is the peace of purity. We already know about the white robe. That is what white represents. All right. And now here is why this makes sense. That this is what this says. And its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him. And the rider had a bow. Notice there are no arrows, just bow at this time. And a crown was given to him. He came out conquering and to conquer. So rereading this, and its rider had a bow with no arrows and a crown. This crown it's talking about is the Stephanos crown. Now remember, we've talked about Stephanos crown. It's a victor's crown. Now, every human being that you see that's talked about or goes to heaven, in heaven, and wearing a victor's crown is one that overcame obviously what happens here on earth. And they followed Christ. That is the victor's crown. But a Stephanos, in context, is still a crown like you used to see the Greeks wear back in the Olympics, way back in the day. That little flowery thing that's kind of halfway around. And you got this. It was a victor's crown. You weren't ruling anything necessarily. It was just a victor's crown. So the word victor's crown is still applicable here. This is exactly what it's talking about. And it says it was given to him, and he came out conquering. I want to stop right there because that word conquering is current. That is a present time thing. I don't mean today present time. It's talking in the present tense because the next thing it says, and to conquer, which should be future tense. So this goes back to what we're talking about. So this person we're talking about is coming out in peace. And he has a bow, but he is not waging war at this time. He has no arrows. And a crown, a Stephanos, a victor's crown was given to him, and he came out conquering. Now, if you remember this word Nikao, we learned this a long time ago, came from the word of Nicolaitans. All right, and the Nicolaitans were those that conquered were over the laity. Nikao, to redo it, means to conquer or to prevail. An example was the Nicolaitans that we see that later on formed into the Catholic Church over the laity. Now, when you think about, when you see this word, your first instinctive reaction is to go, oh, so no. He's coming out conquering. But what is he conquering is the question. Is he conquering people? Or is there something else that's trivial that he's conquering? For instance, if you were to engage or watch or see a fight take place, two people going at it, and you went in there and broke up that fight, you just conquered the fight. You brought peace. That is the context it's talking about. Daniel 9:27. We have read this multiple times, and we're going to do it again because we are talking about the beginning of when the Antichrist is going to come on scene. This is the first seal being cracked. This is him coming out. He's not coming out as this bad guy. He's not coming out this dude that's going to raise hell on earth. He's just going to kill everything and kill everybody. No, he's coming out to make peace and to conquer. But to conquer what? And it says in verse 27 of Daniel, and he, we talked about this, the Antichrist, shall make a strong covenant, a peace deal. We've talked about this. With many for 1 week. The 1 week is 7 years, the point of tribulation. And for half of the week, he shall put an end to the sacrifice and offering. Stop. So half of the week would be 3.5 years. And it says, and for half of the week, that's the last half of the week. So the last 3.5 years, he is going to come out and he's going to take this is the abomination of desolation. He's going to end the sacrifice. He's going to end the worshiping at the temple. But what about the 3.5 years before this actually takes place? And the rest of the verse says, and on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out to the desolator. That's the end of everything. But this is what it's talking about. The Antichrist is going to come on scene making peace. He's going to come out the good guy. If he came out a bad guy, the world is never going to see him as a great guy. He's got to do something that no one in history, let's say for millennium, have never been able to do. What is the one thing that you can look into this world today and go is always a problem? It has been in all of time, and it's been a huge problem since 1948 when Israel became a country, became a state. It is the Palestinian-Israeli war, and we talked about this. We have talked about this in depth. What would it be like if someone came out in Palestine, a Muslim from Islam, and made a peace deal with Israel? Everybody would look at him. Every news media would be going, that dude is amazing. We already think Trump, let me put this in the right context. So many people already think Trump is very good at making peace deals and peace treaties. He's been doing it this last couple of weeks, last month about. And he's stopped a lot of wars. He caused things to come down. And to be honest, even Hillary Clinton came out. I don't know why she did exactly, but she even came out and said, hey, if he can make this happen, I will put him for the Nobel Peace Prize. All right. And there's enemies right there, big time enemies. But the recognition of what Trump did is pretty awesome. And people are recognizing, even in other countries, they're going, wow, what Trump has done in terms of having peace over in the Middle East and Ukraine, Russia, and the things that he's calming things down, people are giving him a lot of credit, but he's not the one making any peace deals. It's not done. What if someone comes out and stops the war between Palestine and Israel, and they actually have a peace deal? That is the recognition. Now, this person is going to be like definitely well promoted and loved. Like, finally, someone is ending this. Finally, someone was a big boy, put on his big boy panties, and quit the pride and quit all the garbage, and sat down with a, if it's in the near future, a Netanyahu, and they finally said, yeah, let's come to accord. Let's have a peace. All right. That's what this is talking about. This person is going to make a peace deal. All right. That's why it's a bow, no quiver, no arrows yet. He hasn't started to wage war on anybody. Later he will. And that he has a Stephanos crown. He is victorious. And I'm just going to say it. He is victorious. Some people are not going to like it. Some people are going to think that I'm just making things up and trying to convince people or something. And that's why we're not jumping to chapter 13. This person in today's time, now, if it's a 500 years from now and something changes lands and countries, it'd be a different animal. But in today, the way things are moving, if someone comes out, you would have a Stephanos, a victor's crown for ending the Palestinian-Israeli war. That's where this comes from. This is where it talks about. And I'm going to make one other side note because I keep talking about the point of the temple. A lot of people think the temple will not be built. I've already mentioned it. The menorah is already done. There's a whole host of people that are sitting in the sidelines. They have warehouses full of everything for the temple to be built. Got it. It's not going to be built right now, today. And in the Jewish kind of side of this, they think it's going to be a divine intervention. All right, that somehow God is just going to make it happen for the temple to be built. They believe it will be, but he's just going to make it happen. That's what they're prepared for. That's cool. Define divine intervention. I mean, the Jews already didn't recognize divine intervention 2,000 years ago. So I'm not dissing Jews. I'm just saying I don't think you quite understand how divine intervention works. That it's not Jesus going to jump down and go, okay, I want a brick here. Get down. No. Oh, yeah, we need a curtain. How big was that? I mean, there's going to be a little bit more to it. But that's why there's a little bit of things going on right now over there. But to my point, also, when we go through Revelation, you will see, and I'll keep saying it over and over, foot stomp, you will see where it specifically tells us the temple is already built. You'll see it. Revelation tells us, not in this prophecy of what Daniel's saying, but because Revelation is chronological to what's going to happen during these 7 years that we're talking about, the tribulation that we're just now starting in, you will see where the temple is physically built, the actual building that we drew up here, I think was it last week. So anyways, so I wanted to point that out. And then it says at the end, so he's coming out conquering the Kao. He has the bow, he has a Stephanos, he's conquering the war, he's bringing peace. That's where he starts out. But then, as it tells us in Daniel, something's going to happen later. And yes, you're going to see when he takes over, he is going to conquer. And it's going to get very, very ugly. And we're going to get into that later, obviously. But he's going to do some serious conquering. So anyways, now that is really kind of the concept of what you understand, that this is going to be chronological, that this is right now, this person coming out, and hopefully you're starting to see the things that we can see in this world today. And I'm going to give you a little kind of some insight right now. Kind of see what's going on in the world today, that this has got to be a Palestinian, especially an Israeli thing. But someone has to have an authority because there has to be a temple built. And if this is wrong, okay, this means there's not going to ever be peace. And we're going to wait for it forever. And, 100 years from now, there's going to be a dude like me standing up going, okay, now here's what's happened. These two countries right here with Israel, they're going to have to make a peace deal. No peace. Okay, 100 years later, I don't know. Could that happen? Sure, it could happen. I'm just telling you what it looks like as of today, but it is Islam, and we'll get more into that. So now, like I told you before, one of the things that have to happen is Islam, my bad. Palestine has got to be a state, all right? It's got to have a sovereign authority. It does not have that right now, all right? So I just want to point a couple things out for you. And the reason why I made tonight kind of a little bit short on that is so that give you a direction to look. So a lot of people will point out, like, go look here. Here is the Antichrist. Here is the country that's doing that. It's Great Britain. It is Rome. It's this. And this guy's going to be Trump and all these other blowhard things. So what I want to do, and as we go through this, everything we're talking about is just going to keep unfolding. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to give you a direction to look to see what's going on. There's going to be two things I want to point out tonight. So, and this was not planned. I did not plan back in January, like, okay, I have to make sure I get to this study at the very 1st of September, because this month is an important month. So this month is the UN Security Council meeting, all right? Happens this month, and the end of this month is the UN meeting. Now, one of the things they're going to talk about, which scares me more than the second thing they're going to talk about, this scares me, period. Especially if there is not a tribulation and crisis coming anytime soon, what they're going to be talking on scares me. And this is what one of the things is, they're going to just have a discussion of AI. There's going to be 40 scientists having a global discussion on AI and AI's governance globally. Like, we're talking like, do we give AI authority over nations and people and governments around the world? This is an actual discussion by scientists, not governors. I mean, but they're actually having this. I'm not going to say all of a sudden they go, yeah, right now, no more presidents, no more kings, AI is now in charge. Not saying that's going to happen, but the scary part is they're actually now talking about having artificial intelligence conduct governance, and they're actually going to start discussing these things. That's not the one I want to hit on. What I want to hit on is, so right now I'm going to grab my pen. Hope everybody's got them. I don't have to flip it. So this year, and which almost every year, there's going to be a vote. They're going to be voting on, they're going to be talking about whether or not Palestine can become a state. All right. Now, here's the key factor to this. This gets talked about a lot. Let's just be real. This is something that's normal. But like I said, for Palestine to truly make a deal, it needs to be a state to make it so it's like a recognized country. Let's put that, and that happens through the UN. So right now, you have to have 66% of UN countries, all right, have to say yay. All right, okay, yeah, I approve this. Now, that has always been, we've been close to that. It's been kind of a quabble number. Someone, yeah, no, because of US influence. Standing right now, the word is on the street, they're sitting at 75%. 75% of the UN nations are pretty much in agreement. This is a rough number, but around 75% are in agreement to, yeah, we'll make UN a country. So meaning, or Palestine, if it goes to vote and it goes all this way, and this happens, they already have enough votes to make them a state. Now, the only problem is there's also a Security Council. Security Council. All right, and it is made up of the US, the UK, France, Russia, and China. All right? Okay, these 5 Security Council members have to, all of them, be in agreement. So meaning if there's one vetoed vote that says no to this, then it's washed. Now, earlier in 2024, I'm sorry, where did I get 14? In 2024, yes, the U.S. vetoed it because of the things with Hamas. But now what's happening, there was more to it than that. Numbers weren't exactly the same, but right now the word is UK, France, Russia, and China are right now all in agreement to recognize Palestine as a state. The only one hanging in limbo currently right now, there's more to this, is the United States. Okay, we all know Trump. Trump, he can be a wild child. He can show one face and give you something else. And a lot of it's deception. A lot of it's for doing the things he does. It's not a diss. It's not a pro. It's none of this stuff. But the point is, so there's a back and forth. What does he think he's going to do? He hasn't really said. Now, I have some stuff on my phone. I'm going to see if I can do this. I'll actually have to look it up that I printed out. So one of the things that we have said, the United States, that Trump himself has said, and the U.S. believes in, that Hamas, all right, that Palestine/Hamas, because of the war that's going on, would have to agree to a ceasefire. Now, some people say a peace deal. Now, to what I read, it was actually a ceasefire. This happened in June, beginning of June, I think it was. So this ceasefire is drawn up. It's a 60-day ceasefire to start this ball rolling. And we all know what Hamas does and how Hamas is and yada, yada, yada. And if you're anti-Israel because the things they're doing, I'm not saying everything they're doing is positive either. I'm not doing a pro one way or another. That's not my point to this. Trump came out and said that Netanyahu was like, yeah, we'll agree to this peace deal. Sounds like a good idea. Well, he backed out. He's not agreeing to it. But Hamas is. As of August 16th, they said, we agree to even giving back hostages. And there has been special envoys to the U.S. There's another individual in the Israeli governance. I'm just going to leave it at that right now. Israeli governance that have come out, and the Israeli government said there's no way that we can actually look at this as a complete disarmament to Hamas because there's no way to know if they truly disarm. So there's been talks about, okay, the disarmament will be we will not build any more, because there's a lot of unexploded ordnance over there, UXO. We will not make any more UX over there. We'll turn this stuff in. We'll destroy tunnels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As a show by Hamas to not to do this peace deal, to start the peace transaction, because not because the U.S. is pressuring them, not because the U.K. is pressuring them, or not because Israel, anybody else. It's because their own Arab nations are now pressing them. This is the first time in history. Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, others are pressuring them to actually disarm. That's the first time in history of them. So there is a lot of backing right now to disarm Hamas, to get Palestine to be a state. The U.S., and I'm not trying to play politics here, but the U.S. is allied to all these countries and very faithful to Israel. But Israel backed out on what they said. Now, I don't know what, we still have a month, almost a month before transactions can go. So what my point is, I'm not saying that this year, but I want you to see the elevation of the climate that's happening over there, that Trump will come in and say, yes. I cannot guarantee that. Anything can change anything. But the way the demonstration of the world is going right now, it's definitely go that way. And Trump has said he wants a ceasefire. There's even some people say he wants to see a peace deal between Palestine and them. But that peace deal, I don't know what that peace deal would entail. So I'm not saying it's the peace deal we're talking about in Revelation right here. What I'm trying to demonstrate and understand that this is very real today. So if in this year, let's just hypothetically say that Trump were to give a yes and everybody else gave a yes, and then this gave a yes, and then it went to the, it's not the president of, the guy that runs the UN, the head, what's that? Secretary General, thank you. The Secretary General, he's the last one. Well, he's already pro it anyway. So if it passes this, which is this month, then they would be recognized as a state. Now, there's two things you can be recognized as a state and a member of the UN. We can't confuse the two. Right now, a lot of people not really as pro them being a member of the UN, but they're pro them becoming a state. That's all they really need. But there's two different types of votes going on. But the one that I'm talking about here is going to be for the Palestinian state. So if it happens, all I'm going to say, if it were to happen this year or next year, I don't know when, but if it were to happen, and it looks like it is because these numbers weren't here, and more countries, especially the European Union and the UK area, are really starting to do a supportive thing to. Phil just showed me a video on the King of England. He's dressed in the black robe and he is lifting Islam up. Very pro. These countries are building that way. We can go more into that, but that's not tonight. My point is, if this happens, and it seems to be heading in that direction, then they become a state. If they become a state, they are now an authority to what? To make a peace treaty that is actually talked about in here. And if that peace treaty somehow involves, or right after, an agreement to, yeah, go ahead and build your temple. I'm telling you, pay attention to what this is saying, because that's the direction we're going. So one other thing I want you to look at too, and since I talked on this, one more thing, worldwide thing that is still centered around Islam. I'm not going to tell you the answer right now because that's going to be part of our study. It's like going down the number 666. That also another thing that's going to be happening, I'll tell you this right now, Iraq plays a piece in some things that are going to be happening as we go through Revelation, a very important piece. and the Bible specifically tells it, but it doesn't say the word Iraq. I'm going to tell you this. Don't go to the Bible, go Google search Iraq in Revelation. You're not going to see it. It's being able to understand as we're going what it's talking about. But here's what I'm going to tell you right now. One of the primary factors that has to happen where Iraq plays a deal in this, and they're not at this point right now, is they would be aligned. They have to be aligned with Iran. They have to kind of like be buddy, 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 buddy. Well, as of today, or as of right now, there is friction between the two. There has been obviously friction between the two, kind of. A large part of that is because the U.S. has been in Iraq. So when we took down Iraq, and I think in 2018 is when we finally started rebuilding their government, the parliament, and how to vote, and the parliamentary seats, and run a government. The U.S. was a massive boost in helping them design that and getting votes, but also a protection detail. Like we were, the military is there. You do stupid things, we're going to do stupid things too and have a good time. So they've been a massive influence to basically as advisors and getting them going the right direction. Well, and they've done really well. Now, I've been over there multiple times, and their government is functioning. They're very self-sufficient. They still have an ISIS problem, but that has nothing to do with ISIS right now. So anyways, that's what's going on. But here's the thing. As of now, this month right here, and there might be a draw on this because there's been some stupid things, but when I was just came back from there, the big thing, the push of what was happening is the U.S. is leaving Iraq. Right now, when I say leaving, more in a military combative fashion. All right. So I'll say this. One of the things that's kind of involved in was getting guys prepared, Iraqi people prepared to go out and do their own job fighting ISIS. Let's just put it that way. So that we, the U.S., can quit spending so much money and get out of Iraq. You're thinking, okay, yeah, big deal, they're doing well. Well, here's the problem. The guy that, I'm sorry, we have to look this up really quick for you. Oh, it's right there. So right now, the Iraqi prime minister is Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. He's going to maintain to being the prime minister. All right. Sudani, from when I was over there and always been, Sudani is okay with us. All right. He's very pro-Iran, but he's also very pro-us because we supply a lot of money. Okay. But now if we leave, because he's part of, within the Shia coordination framework, which also runs one of their Iranian-backed militias, which is the PMF, the Popular Mobilization Forces, right? These are all pro-Shia. These are all pro-Iran. So is the prime minister, right? And right now in their parliament, their majority is Shia. All right, now Shia can be a Shia Iraq, Shia Muslim, or Shia Iran, but they are Shia, which is opposing Sunni, so that makes it more of a Shia nation. Now, here's the thing. There's another movement aside that, kind of, sort of, and it's called the Sadrist movement. All right, so this guy Sadr, when I was there in 2022, I just gave that away, didn't I? So when I was over there a couple of years ago, this guy was making a movement because he was one of these guys that was like, I just want Iraq to be Iraq. I want no influence, no U.S., no Iran, no nobody. I want us to be independent. And I'm 100% behind that kind of mentality. Get everybody out, I'll run my own country. But they were smaller in size, but they made a push. And there actually became a thing to when we were there, we were watching ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, happening over Baghdad. And there was, I'm not going to get into, there was a lot of rioting, a lot of bad things going on up and around the parliament government building. Now, if you remember back in January 6th, I got to bring this up because I got to say this to the morons out there, and this is more to our media. January 6th in this country a few years ago with Trump, we had people that went in, they called this the insurrection. Oh my gosh, the world's coming to an end. Trump needs to die, and all these insurrections have to go to prison. The exact same thing happened in Iraq. Now we're talking with guns. We're talking with a lot of rioting, broke into and got into parliament, all right, and had a massive insurrection. The same media sources going, they have that right. That's how you control a government. So anybody that's buying this insurrection garbage, yeah, I'm a little bit upset because you also think If you're buying their things, you're saying the exact same thing happened in Iraq was an insurrection, but it's far worse. They did the exact same thing. So they had that in 22. Sauder backed off a little bit, and he's got about, into his movement side, he has about 885,000 votes of people that support him. The Shia Coordination has 1.65 million. This November is another vote, which means Parliament, and because most people in that country and where things are going, Parliament numbers to Shiite, is going to increase. The U.S. is extracting, not being the person telling them what to do. We're just kind of there as an advisor, but you run your own government. If it goes that way, and what the PMF and what the coordination framework wants to do, they want to be aligned, neck and neck, right to the prime minister with Iran. If that happens, that actually answers biblical prophecy you're going to read in Revelation. I'm telling you this today, therefore, because if it does happen, that you heard it before we read it, and then I don't just go, oh, you remember, 6 months ago when that happened? It's right here, and like try to marry the two. I'm just pointing out things are going to happen. Now, am I telling you they're going to be married in November? No. There's always going to have to be some sort of political movement and shift to make things happen, but it is leaning to a biblical revelation prophecy that must happen, that must take place for Revelation to be completely through, and we'll get more into that later. But I wanted to point that out to you, those two things. So pay attention to what happens to Palestine. Pay attention to the UN. Just keep this stuff in your head. Watch what's going on in Israel. Quit worrying about the UK. Well, you can worry about them. Quit worrying about Rome's going to be the next Antichrist. I'm trying to show you this is the direction you need to look, because as we go through this, this is all going to add up. It's all going to make sense in the things you're seeing in the world today. I'm just trying to show you the world. I'm not giving you the answer. I'm just showing you what kind of biblically which direction this is going. So, yeah, that's all I got for tonight. I hope that was interesting. Next week, we are going to understand that time of how long it's been, this 2,000 years, plus these sevens and the 7 years. It's going to be a fun study into, why has it been so long? There is a very, very cool, specific reason why it's taken this long. And take longer, possibly. So anyways, thanks for your time tonight. Anybody got any questions?